Back in 2007, nobody saw Mike Tomlin coming in the Steelers head coaching search. A lot of people thought it would be Ken Wisenhunt or Dick LeBeau or somebody from the Bill Cowher staff being promoted. But no, Tomlin came in and had a great interview, and he ended up being named the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, to everyone's surprise. So today on Steelers Talk, we're going to be breaking down some potential surprise head coach candidates for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some people that maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now as favorites, but could potentially knock the socks off of Art Rooney and Omar Khan to become the next head coach of the Black and Gold. Now, if you guys want to see the first slate of interviews that have come in and my thoughts on those coaches, guys like Chris Shula, Brian Flores, Jesse Minner, and more, I share my breakdowns on all of those candidates on yesterday's show, so make sure you guys check out that show if you haven't already. I'll put the chip to that one in the top right of today's show, and make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to never miss a coaching search update. The Steelers have already put in a couple more head coaching interview requests today that we'll be discussing in our PM video coming up later this evening. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. With that, let's get into today's show. All right, the first dark horse head coach candidate that we're going to talk about today for the Pittsburgh Steelers is Jacksonville Jaguars defensive coordinator Anthony Campanile. And Tony is somebody that is definitely a high-energy individual. He is somebody that definitely has a presence when he's speaking to players. He was very famous for some of his speeches that he gave on Hard Knocks a couple of years ago in season with the Miami Dolphins. And, of course, then he goes to the Packers, and then he goes to the Jaguars, where he is now the defensive coordinator. He's only 42 years old, so even though he's not under the age of 40 like the Steelers usually like to hire, he's definitely in that ballpark. He definitely helped turn around the Jacksonville Jaguars defense in just one season under head coach Liam Cohen there in Duval. And the scheme that they run is a very similar system to what Robert Saleh runs with the San Francisco 49ers. It is a nickel-based defense with split safeties, two high safety defense, and he has done a really good job implementing this system that he learned from Jeff Hafley in Green Bay there in Jacksonville. And, Mike Tomlin, when he got the job in 2007, he was an up-and-coming, defensive coordinator that was only a coordinator for 1 year, just like Campanile, and he was a very charismatic leader that, really crushed the interview process. I think Campanile is the type of strong personality that could knock the socks off of Art Rooney and Omar Khan if he gets an opportunity to interview for the position. He's already gotten an interview with the Miami Dolphins, a team that he has been with previously, and I think that he's the type of leader of men that Art Rooney says that he really wants as the main thing that he wants in the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if anybody is going to come out of this field and really knock the socks off of Art Rooney and Omar Khan the way that Mike Tomlin did back in 2007, I could easily see it being Campanile, especially because he's got connections to a number of different high-quality offensive coordinator candidates like Grant Udinski, who we're going to talk about here in just a second, like Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator in Miami, Darrell Bevel, the quarterback's coach in Miami. He's got a bunch of different connections across the league in Green Bay, Miami, and Jacksonville that he could choose from to be his OC. So I honestly think Campanile is one of the more underrated head coach candidates for the Pittsburgh Steelers that are out there, and I feel like nobody is talking about him that way. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comments section. What's a strong Steelers head coach candidate that nobody is talking about right now? Who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comments section. We might even talk about him later in today's show. This will be the pinned comment on today's program. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Polymarket. And while I tell you about today's sponsor, let me know who's a dark horse Steelers head coach candidate that nobody is talking about right now. It's time to challenge the status quo, and Polymarket is now live to help us do so. You can be a part of the revolutionary alternative to sportsbooks with our special invite code. Download Polymarket's new app now via the special link that is in the description and comments to unlock the exclusive early access and a free $10 in your account with the invite code chat. Polymarket is a prediction marketplace that lets you make trades on the outcome of sporting events. And as you guys can see on screen here, you guys can even buy and sell within the game itself. itself with live trading. Polymarket has the lowest fees ever. You trade against other people and not the platform, and you can cash out anytime and react to momentum swings within the game. You are in control. It's legal and available nationwide in all 50 states on their iOS app right now. And just as an example here, guys, for Houston versus New England this weekend, they give New England a 62% chance to win and Houston a 39% chance to win, which makes sense because New England's playing some really good ball right now, and they are home. So $10 free is waiting for you guys right now. No card, no deposit, nothing. Download the app with our exclusive code CHAT at chatsports.com/polymarket for exclusive early access and $10 free. So let's go from one coordinator in Duval to the other one here, talking about offensive coordinator for the Jaguars, Grant Udinski, who a lot of people are tabbing as the next Sean McVay. And obviously the Steelers don't, make head coaching hires all that often. If they want to get in on somebody that a lot of people believe is the next offensive whiz, the next Ben Johnson, the next Kyle Shanahan, the next Sean McVay, Grant Udinski at just 30 years old might be the guy here. And, he's received very lofty praise from guys that know ball, okay? Kevin O'Connell, Liam Cohen, these guys that have been some of the best branches on the Sean McVay tree. They have just absolutely just heaped praise on this young man who apparently is all about football. You listen to this guy talk about football, man. He sounds like Sean McVay when he talks ball, like the details that he, brings up. It's not just generalities. He brings up, nuances when he's talking to the media, and you can tell it kind of confuses people because, he gets into the weeds when he talks about ball. And that's the way Sean McVay talks about it. That's the way Kyle Shanahan talks about it. That's how the best offensive minds in the game talk about it when they're just talking about it. And, Udinsky, I think, has a chance to be, that next Sean McVay, that next Ben Johnson, that next Kevin O'Connell. And this is what KOC had to say when he was interviewing Udinsky for his offensive assistant role a couple years back. He says, interviewing Grant was like interviewing a guy who could build a car from scratch for a job at a car wash, essentially saying he was overly qualified for the job he was applying for, especially for a guy of his age. That is extremely, extremely impressive. He hasn't been in coaching all that long, but if the Pittsburgh Steelers want to get, really young and go really outside of the box and, go out and get the next Sean McVay and get that guy for the future, Grant Udinski could be that guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, the Cleveland Browns are set to interview him, and I kind of don't want him in our division having to play him twice a year. He's somebody that has learned from some of the best in the game today. He would be the youngest head coach in NFL history, beating out Sean McVay by just a couple of months if he gets hired, though. So that is kind of the risk with hiring a guy this young. But if you want an offensive guru, Grant Udinski might be the guy, and he might be the dark horse offensive candidate in this head coaching cycle. Then another guy that has some connections with Sean McVay is Thomas Brown, current pass game coordinator and tight ends coach for the New England Patriots, working under, of course, Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels, the OC, there in New England. But Brown has got some play calling experience, and this is somebody that has gotten, a bunch of praise heaped on him by Sean McVay himself. He was the assistant head coach to Sean in Los Angeles. He always talks glowingly about this guy and his leadership capabilities. He is under the age of 40, and he has helped develop the likes of Drake May there in New England into, some people would even argue he's already a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League, and he's known for his strong leadership qualities. So kind of like we talked about with Campanile, if there's somebody that's going to be, going into that interview with Art Rooney and Omar Khan and knock their socks off, I think this is somebody that has the presence that, could potentially land him the job here in Pittsburgh if things go well. This is what Sean McVay has to say about a guy like Thomas Brown. He says, I know that Thomas has always been a guy that's had incredible command. He's been a great competitor. He kind of demands respect from people that he's around just by the way he carries himself. So this is somebody that could be a Mike Tomlin-esque type of hire on the offensive side of the ball, if you want to call it that. Definitely a name to keep your eye on as a dark horse, in my opinion. Then Aubrey Pleasant, the current assistant head coach there in Los Angeles. He also coaches DBs for the Rams. This is somebody that's been seen as an up-and-coming defensive guy. If Chris Shula gets a head coaching job this year and, I would say Shula's probably the favorite to get the Steelers job this year. Pleasant would be, the next guy that would step up into the defensive coordinator role. That's what's kind of been expected, is that Pleasant would be the next guy up in the DC role there in LA, but he's only 38 years old. He's done a really good job with the Los Angeles Rams' secondary there, and he is seen as an up-and-coming defensive coach and, somebody that has strong leadership qualities. He's another guy that Sean McVay just really talks really highly of, so certainly a name to keep your eye on as well. Then we get to a really interesting name here with some ties to the Steelers, and that's Christian Parker, the current defensive pass game coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, okay? And Parker, really young, actually the same age that both Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin were when they got hired as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, just 34 years old. He has been Vic Fangio's right-hand man for many years, going back to his Denver days, and then he was poached from Sean Payton's coaching staff back in 2024 to fix the Philadelphia Eagles' secondary and be their DB coach along with their pass game coordinator, and he has helped develop young stars in that Philly secondary like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. He helped develop the likes of Pat Surtain into one of the most dominant corners we've seen in the last half decade here in the National Football League, and the players there in Philly just absolutely rave about Christian Parker's leadership ability, his communication ability, and he just kind of seems like that mold of up-and-coming defensive mind that the Pittsburgh Steelers could be interested in if Parker, knocks their socks off in a potential interview. But Parker could bring a very interesting defense, one of my favorite defensive systems in the National Football League today, which is Vic Fangio's defense. And the fact that he has been, his right-hand man for many years. And, Fangio is really known for his Zeus defense. And if you guys don't know what Zeus is, it's a defensive play call with a bunch of different zone match coverages tied into one coverage. And pretty much what it's determined by is where the number one receiver for the opposing team lines up. So if you're going up against Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase and they're lining up outside, you run cover 8 or cover 6, and you run cover 2 to that side while you play quarters to the other side. Or if they line up in the slot, you play what they call quads, which is just quarters. And you pretty much have that inside bracket with the safety and then the underneath defender on that number one receiver. Essentially what this allows a defense to do is to make sure they have leverage and even potential brackets on number one wide receivers no matter where they line up, and always have the leverage advantage. And there's a reason why Philadelphia, it feels like they're never out of position. It feels like they're never out leveraged. And that reason is because, they have these very malleable defensive systems where they've got these man match and zone match coverages that they can go to at whim based on where, certain players are lining up and what, the certain packages an opposing offense runs. And because these formations and these Zeus packages or their hands packages, their man match version of Zeus, it's very complicated, and the fact that it is so complicated makes it really difficult for offenses to pick up on and defeat. And if you got guys like Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and the talent that they got there in Philadelphia, it creates a defense that is very, very difficult to stop. And I would love that style of defense here in Pittsburgh, and Christian Parker has been the one responsible for teaching this system to young guys like DeJean and Mitchell. And, he got the most out of Darius Slay on that Super Bowl run just last year. So, players also rave about this guy's leadership. Obviously the same age that Tomlin was when he got the head coaching job. So if anybody's going to repeat Tomlin's success and come out of nowhere here, I could see Parker being somebody that could get a look, especially because the Steelers have quite a bit of ties to the Philadelphia Eagles in their front office. Andy Weidel obviously is coming over from Philadelphia as our, now our assistant GM to Omar Khan. And the Steelers have been really approaching how they build this team in a very similar fashion to how Howie Roseman has built the Philadelphia Eagles. Trenches first, using high draft picks in the trenches, all that different stuff. So the fact that they do have those connections to the Philadelphia building lets me think that Parker might get a look, but I do still consider him a dark horse candidate at this point. Then the final guy that we'll talk about today is Jim Leonhard, the Denver Broncos pass game coordinator, and Leonhard's getting a lot of looks from the Cowboys and some other teams for their defensive coordinator position, and for good reason. That Denver Broncos defense is arguably the best in the league. I would still give the slight edge to Houston, but Denver has really done a great job, and that defense is the reason why they are the number one seed in the AFC this year. Leonhard is still a younger option, 43 years old, former player. He's got a little bit of head coaching experience. He was the interim head coach for the Wisconsin Badgers a couple of years ago before coming to the Denver Broncos, and he's another guy that coaches DBs for Sean Payton's group there and Vance Joseph's group there in Denver. And, I'm guessing he would run a very similar scheme to what Joseph runs there in Denver here to Pittsburgh, which is honestly a little bit similar to what the Steelers ran here in Pittsburgh, maybe just a little bit more modern. And Joseph's defense is really a combination of three different defensive minds. It's a really unique combination of Wade Phillips, Mike Zimmer, and then Nick Saban, where they'll run Saban man match coverages and zone match coverages, but they'll go to a 3-4 base front, which is what Wade Phillips ran. And then also they really like to run cover one there in Denver simply because they can. They've got the horses to play man coverage, and if you can do that, you probably should. So they've run a lot more cover one than Joseph has in the past. They really do love cover three match as well. And then on third downs, they love to go to those double A mug looks that Mike Zimmer was famous for. And we've run double A mug looks a lot here in Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin. So this would be a defense I feel like that the current players on the Steelers defense would be able to run and run quickly. So Leonhard is somebody that's a popular name on Steelers Twitter right now as a potential dark horse head coaching candidate. And hey, if you want to give him a shot and he crushes the interview, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it. He's also got connections, obviously, to the Sean Payton coaching tree on offense. So maybe get a guy like Davis Webb as the offensive coordinator here would certainly be a decent combination there to bring here to the Steel City. So what say you guys? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments. Do this to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Have to hire an offensive-minded head coach. Right now, they have actually put in 7 requests, and 6 of them are defensive-minded. So I think the Steelers are probably letting us know that this is probably going to be a defensive-minded hire, but I know a lot of people out there really want an offensive-minded head coach. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Does this have to be an offensive head coaching hire in your mind? Let me know, yes or no, down there in the comments. And that'll be it for this morning's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. We're going to have another video come out later with all the latest head coaching news. We'll talk about Ejiro Evero and Jeff Hafley and any other new head coaching interview requests that come in. I think Brian Flores is going to be in Pittsburgh today interviewing for the head coaching job. If we get anything on that, we'll let you guys know the very latest later tonight. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.